Hello, and welcome back to Quarantine Project, episode 3. It has been a hot minute, but I haven't been doing nothing. I've been doing some stuff off camera. I have a workspace set up with all my materials ready to go, and I have the process of making everything planned out. I'm still going to be winging some stuff, designing as you go, but hopefully some stuff is better and more smooth. I got a better camera tripod, better as it collapses. Anyway, let's get on to talking about what we're gonna do today. So, the plan for today is to finish the cardboard prototype of the mask, test fit some of the electronics, and then once we have that, we will make the final mask. And the plan for the structure of that is to go out of cardboard cardstock first, and then cover that with foam, so that we have a rigid mask, and but it still has that, we can still apply paints correctly. As an example, this is a mask I made a long time ago. It is this full face plague doctor mask. I really like it. It was a project that took a while, but it was fine. But one thing that I'm not so jazzed about is how squishy it is. Of course, I've been wearing it on my face a lot, and it's a curvy shape, but it is squishy, and I don't know if I want that. So after we make the initial cardboard prototype, we'll see how the structural integrity is, and then based off of that, whether or not we need to either just make it out of thicker foam or make it out of cardboard and cover it with a thin foam. With that, let me show you the workspace I've set up. So over here, I have all my paints and brushes. Up here is the I have a sewing kit, and then those goggles that I showed last episode. I have these little guys just sitting there. A lot of tools there, and then more materials. So that box of things, the tubing, and then a lot of those structural materials. And then underneath, we have the clothing bits, the bag with the belts, and then the hot glue and the sandpaper. And with that, I think that we can get started. Hi. So I know I forgot to film that stuff. That's okay. It wasn't that interesting. It was just me laying out the bare bones of the mask. Let's get on to the wacky world of patterning. I made a full mask out of this stuff. It's basically cardstock, but it's slightly thinner, it's easier to work with. I love it. I don't know what it is. I found it in my drawer and I was like, I have a lot of this, and it's very good for patterning. So I made a whole mask, and then I forgot to take a picture of it, and I chopped it into bits. But here was part of it that sat right here. Here was another part of it that sat right there, right? Like I had it existed. And so I took these pieces, which are a bunch of taped together pieces of that stuff that I cut out, and I basically unfolded them into like these are little decorative bits, this is a top bit, and then I took these patterns, right, and then those are cobbled together, so then I actually traced them out well, and how they're supposed to be. So now this is just really easily folds up and sits just about right there. And you have the top piece that sits just about right there. This piece sits right here. And then the eyepiece. I have been test fitting the electronics for the eyepiece. A change happened, actually. Before I was thinking about, having one of the eyes light up, but there's a couple downsides to that. While I'm talking about this, I'm gonna assemble this so I can show you. There's a couple downsides to that. First off, if you have an eyepiece that has lights in it so that the light is shining outwards, which I have had in multiple masks that I have made before, it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to then see out of that eyepiece. You're just blinded. It's like staring at the sun 24/7. And vision is already limited in lensed masks, like masks with dark lenses and stuff like that. Your vision is already really limited in while wearing those. So having something that further limits the vision is just like not good. Secondly is that I just mentioned, that if you have a mask that has lenses with it, you're like me and you like Halloween and you want to go walk around at night at Halloween. If you're wearing dark lenses that obscure your vision, you aren't going to be able to see anything. I've gotten lost so many times, and especially if you have a mask that like has electronics connected to you, you don't want to have to take that mask off and then put it back on over and over again to be able to navigate. So to fix this, the lens, the actual thing is going to be right in the center with the actual lights blocked from the eyes, and then there are going to be slits cut that you can see through, because humans are good at seeing through little slits like that. This is one of the lenses from the goggles, and it looks fine until you turn it sideways and see how freaking thick that is. Like, oh my god. Like, just looking around, it's fine, but I'm a brightly lit room. If you're at a convention or just out when it's darker, there's a lot of people, or you're like trying to follow points of light because everything else is super dark, it just gets really challenging. So I try to avoid that. Then that leads me to the actual eyepiece, which with the kind of other stuff looks like this. Wow, that's probably really bad for the camera. There's a little artifact that pops up. So I actually used one of those lenses, that's why I could only show you one, in this design. So it's blue and then darker in the center, and then it basically sits right here and can scan around. And there's the wires come out from a little slit in the sides. And yeah, so let me deconstruct this thing, because I'm actually pretty proud of what this is. It's a bunch of different pieces all sandwiched on top of each other. So on the very top, you have this this blue piece, which is actually a piece of just like normal Lexan that I cut out painstakingly and then sanded to give it like a kind of what do they call it, frosted effect, and then I painted it blue. As we further disassemble this, now you can see this kind of assembly in here, and if I pop off this, which is the outer ring, which will be made of foam, the only interesting thing about this, obviously the shape, those angles are cut to actually fit the angles that are going to be on the mask when it sits like this, and then the little slit in the side that I had to cut to run the wires. Sorry. So then we are left with this piece, and this again is a sandwich. It's 3 pieces. So on the top we have the red lens, which right now just has a piece of tape on the bottom. It'll be actual like hot glue or a rubber cement when I actually do it. And then the lens is, so you can see this, the lens goes right on top, and it almost fits perfectly in this, it does fit perfectly in this ring of LEDs that I showed you earlier, which is like down to the very, very millimeter, it fits perfectly. It's really awesome, actually. And then on the bottom of that, I'm gonna have a piece of foam, and this is to isolate the light and just keep everything contained. So on the bottom of that piece of tape, I just stick, right now it's a piece of that foam, a piece of that like cardstock stuff, but it can be a piece of foam board that sticks to the bottom. And then once this is all assembled and pressed together, it's this just this little light, which I don't want to blind you, but it does that, and it looks really good, especially under this. So basically that's it, and then that sits inside here perfectly. That's that. Hopefully I do remember to film a time lapse of me cutting these out, and then I can talk you through the process of assembling the mask. That's gonna be next. So let's get to that. Hi, hello. I don't know how well you can hear. I have to be quiet because it is late o'clock outside and inside, I guess. But you've just watched that time lapse, hopefully. Sorry about my hair. And yeah, I have a mask. So I took those. Well, I had one before, but it wasn't great. This still isn't amazing, but it exists. So I took those patterns, I cut out duplicates of them, I put them together. I was missing a piece that I forgot about that goes right up the head. But yeah, so as long as this lens doesn't fall out, I just put one in there so that there was some contrast. But you can kind of see how this thing is gonna look. Hopefully it doesn't fall off my face. Wow. Yeah, that's what I didn't want to happen. Good thing these are not made of glass. So yeah, I am happy with this. This needs some work, but it's okay. It'll get worked on. What happens next is the assembly of the final one, which the cutting out and assembly of the final one. But before that, I'm gonna go over some details that are going to be on the final mask that aren't on this mask. So earlier in the series, I talked about using these. I talked about using these guys with the little canisters in there, and my thought was that I would be able to fit the end of this tube onto this canister, which I cannot because the tube's not as stretchy as I thought it was. But that's okay, because here's what I can do. These canisters are removable, and I have a lot of them, but they have a top and a bottom. If I take it and I stick it like that in there, that means that exit hole is now on the bottom. So logically, tubes can be coming out of the bottom. So that, and I can like, oh, you gotta put a new canister in, you need air, or whatever, just shunk, put that in there. And I wanted 2 tubes anyway, and I don't want to put 2 of these, so I can run 2 tubes out of the bottom and just have it look like that. These guys are gonna go on the sides here, and those tubes are gonna run from there into this mask plate here. There's also gonna be some other details. Of course, earlier you saw the light, the actual light bit that goes in. Yeah, that goes in here. I still haven't decided if I'm gonna run the electronics down or up, but we'll see. And then you're gonna be able to see out of right here and right there. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that's missing from the mask. Of course, there's the strap as well, and then the details on the pieces. So this piece rivets, right? The different colors of everything, which I want this to be silver, and I want these parts to be a bronze, or I want this to be silver and this to be a bronze, which I'm thinking I want most of it to be a gunmetal gray, which is going to be interesting considering the paints that I have. I don't have a gunmetal gray, but I can probably make one. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with it. I've spent about 2 hours on this, which is less time than I thought it would take, but I did do a lot of planning in advance, which this is just another example of how when you plan stuff out ahead of time, it generally works out better than if you don't do that. So yeah, that's that, I guess. I said that I was going to do finish the mask in this episode, but it's very late, and I want to upload this episode within the next week. So even though I don't have that many days left in the actual project, I still think I'm gonna just end this episode with this, because this is a good high note to end on. Having the mask now actually fully assembled, and this is I haven't mentioned it, but this is after a bunch of failed attempts, which you didn't see. Like when I was initially making the pattern, I tried many times to actually make a mask. There's a lot of discarded, cut up cardstock that is just never going to see a video screen or a person's face, because it was terrible. Like when I started, it looked like a box, just a box on someone's face. Getting it to keep a geometrical shape while also conforming to a human face was a little bit tricky. And it took me a couple tries to actually get it right, to get the design correct. So I think this, if you count this as another iteration, which I do, I believe this is iteration 5. This is attempt number 5, and yeah. So that's that, I guess. I will see you guys in the next episode.